The Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast is proudly sponsored by New Vision.
My team, kinda power. I love the power. I love the power.
Hi and welcome to the Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast. This is a weekly show dedicated to all things Port Adelaide Football Club. I'm your host Macca 19 and joining me again is regular co-host Fishing Rico 4. How are you, mate?
Very good, Macca. You?
Good. Draft day's always good, mate.
I know you're excited.
That's it. And returning this week are our draft gurus, Janus.
Hello.
How you going?
Not too bad.
That's the way. And also Mission Possible.
Hi, guys.
Good to have you back.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
So we've got Janus and Mission Possible back on to discuss our thoughts on both the national and rookie drafts. Obviously, the national draft was last week. Rookie draft was today. Very exciting. How was your draft days? Where did you watch it? Did you find it at all interesting?
Well, I was at work.
You're at work?
Yes, so I had to rely on Macca texting me who the hell we got.
Oh, some of the responses were interesting. Oh, dear. Rick, what about you, mate? Where did you watch it?
I sat at home and watched it on the box and had to put up with grief from my family about why the hell am I watching something as boring as this? And but no, it was quite interesting to see who was going to be our much-loved number 21 that we always wanted. But no, I quite enjoyed it.
And Janus, what about yourself?
I just listened to it on the radio, pretty much, and watched it on the website, seeing what everyone was saying.
Yep. That would have been interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. That's all right. Myself, it generally takes me about an hour and 15 minutes to get home from work every day. So I left 10 minutes early, got stuck behind every grey nomad you could possibly think of, going 70 and 110 zones, with no overtaking possibilities, tearing whatever little bit of my hair is left out. Got home with about 2 minutes to spare, chucked the TV on, and listened to Andrew Demetrio talk for 25 minutes. So... But I really love draft day. It's probably my favourite day of the calendar. It's always interesting to see where the players you read about are going to go. Just as a bit of a recap for our phantom picks last week, we had pick 21 being Darcy Byrne-Jones. Obviously, we'll talk about him a bit later on. Pick 45 was Darcy Hourigan. Pick 52 was Toby Nankervis. And pick 68 was Luke Buckby. Now, we obviously ended up with Darcy Byrne-Jones with a later pick, which was fantastic. Two of those went undrafted, and Nankervis went to the Swans, I think, before our second pick at 45. So what we might do is just jump straight into it and have a little bit of a quick discussion about the draft as a whole. Now, any surprises before our first pick at all?
James Aish. I was surprised that he slid to number 7. I thought he would have been a bit higher up there.
Yeah, I thought he would probably go to the Dogs, but they chose Bontempelli instead.
Yeah, well, I thought Mish last week was saying that Bontempelli was still maybe a little bit of a risk, sort of a pick for that sort of higher-end pick. So that's why I was surprised that Aish slid that far, really.
Yeah.
It's interesting because Bullies now 2 years in a row have been prepared to take the risk on their high pick. They did it with Stringer last year. So they've got the track record of just backing themselves in.
Yep.
That'd be an argument against doing it again this year, though, really, wouldn't it? Because, I mean, Stringer was a big brute of a lad too, isn't he? He's like early 190s in height, but injury prone, and you would have thought they might have gone down the reliable path this year.
Mm.
Yeah, you can think of it either way, like keep backing yourselves in or take it safety. I think the fact that they're very happy with how last year worked out, so I think they're quite happy to still go down the path. I think if one of them had bombed out, I think you'd find they would have gone more safety.
Probably a couple of the interesting picks for me was the pre-draft chatter about Patrick Cripps going to Carlton was spot on. Ben Lennon went to Richmond, of course, but Cameron McCarthy to GWS. I'm not sure anyone really saw that coming.
That was just crazy. I just can't fathom why they've done it.
Yeah, it's unnecessary, isn't it?
All right.
I think it's
really,
clever
it would have
drafting.
to be playing him as a defender in that team. I'll just sit there and go, why?
I think it's clever in the fact that I think they're trying to think 2, 3, 4 years ahead, and the trade value that these guys are going to have, especially if a couple of them don't make it. Say if Jonathan Patton doesn't recover from his knee injury properly, I still think guys like him and McCarthy will get quite a bit at the trade table, I would think.
What did we pay for Schulz when he came across?
Mitch Farmer.
Which was not much, wasn't it?
No, that was
yeah,
not much at all. Yeah.
Like, I would be thinking that if McCarthy is is it the same sort of, will he be better or worse than Joe Schulz is in terms of being a key position player? You know what I mean? Like, just because these guys are tall doesn't mean they're actually going to make it or anything like that. They could still... I understand what GWS is doing. They're stacking up and getting every single tall because maybe some of them make them, maybe they won't, and key position players are supposed to have a higher trade value.
Yep.
But that being said, if he's not getting a game and no one can see it, people will just look at him and go, well, we'll give you, I don't know, a second-round draft pick or whatever.
Yeah.
Because there's no quantifiable form that they can point to and say, well, this guy is really good or is really bad. All you can say is, oh yeah, pick 14 in this weak draft. So, I don't know. I can understand it both ways, but I've just got a feeling that it's not going to work out as much as they think it will because that's a best-case scenario for them.
Yep.
I agree with you,
There's
Janus.
also talk that they picked him because Sydney were going to go bang with the pick straight after. And they did it to piss them off. It's a bit of payback for Buddy, maybe.
Well, that's just stupid if you're thinking along those lines.
Yeah.
You got to look after yourself. You don't worry about what anybody else is going to pick.
I still think it's an interesting choice because now they've got Cameron, who's obviously a superstar. Patton could be. They've got Thomas Boyd now. Cameron McCarthy. They've also got Christian Jakes from last year.
Yep.
Yeah, it's an interesting strategy, and I really look forward to seeing how that's going to work out in about 3 years' time. I can only assume that they're thinking in 3 years' time they're going to be well entrenched in the top 8. They're going to be looking for ready-made players to push them towards being a premiership threat, and they're going to have plenty of trade value there to be able to do that. Guess we'll see what happens. The other interesting one was Trent de Menthe. He slid all the way to pick 30, and I honestly did not expect him to go past St Kilda at 18 or 19.
I am amazed by it. But, again, this draft's been interesting because if you look at the guys who have slid, and their skin folds are shocking. And it's as if the recruiting departments across the country have gone, no, if they're not fit, we're not going to work on it, backing ourselves to get them fit. It's almost as if they're judging their attitude by their shape of their body when they turn up.
Yep.
Well, I would liken it to turning up to an interview for like a job interview in just like casual clothes or something like that instead of wearing a suit. If you can't prepare your body right up to this, I mean, these guys preparing themselves for this day to get drafted, and if they can't get it right for that particular day, then I don't know if any fitness guy is going to be able to help them get to that level. You know, like you look at guys, I think there's people who hire coaches to work on like improving their sprinting and things like that. I don't know. It just seems to me that if that's the case and these guys are presenting themselves in that unfit state for what's going to be their professional career, then I can understand why the recruiting departments will say, nah, sorry, mate, you're not presenting yourself to work properly.
Yep.
It's fair enough too.
Yeah, absolutely. There's quite a lot of other sliders as well. I mean, they all seem to come from South Australia. That's the problem. I mean, Battersby missed out, Dwayne Wilson missed out, Luke Reynolds missed out. Is that sort
Macca,
of... Yeah.
what about the big slider who was in the top 13, Matt Crouch? It was amazing.
Yeah, I thought he was always going to go to the Crows. It just seemed like harmony that he was always going to end up there.
Maybe it was designed to be sort of like Dale Garlett with Hawthorn.
Could quick question for Mish. It's been highly talked about that this is a very weak draft year. South Australia won the championships. That very rarely happens. Vic Metro struggled. Is the fact that, I mean, the recruiters as a whole, it seems like pre-draft, all the non-Victorian kids are highly rated, and then it seems like draft day comes along and they sort of choke a little bit and then just choose the Vic Metro kids anyway. And it leaves the non-Victorian players to slide down the ladder a little bit. Is that something that actually happens, or am I just sort of dreaming?
I don't think it dreams. You're dreaming it, and it doesn't happen. But it does from where you're sitting, because big footy and such, and our local media builds up our kids higher than they are.
Yep.
Right, I've seen it year on year out, where they're talking up this 5'10" midfielder to be first round, and we're just sitting there going, we don't think he'll even get a rookie list. And yet the media's still pumping up, big footy's still pumping him up. So when it comes draft day, he doesn't get drafted, he looks like this massive slider, where he was never in the calculations anyway. Yep. So that makes it hard. South Australia, the kids physically don't present themselves as well as the interstate kids. Which the side effect of that is South Australian kids that get picked up have generally got more upside than the other kids.
Yep.
Just there are not many South Australian kids who have got great endurance bases. Now, I can't see that that's a climate issue. I just think that's how our local footy clubs don't do enough professional work with the kids.
Okay.
Hopefully that will change soon with the academy and stuff.
Yes. So that's going to be interesting. So I think the SANFL clubs are behind the TAC clubs in their development of their juniors. Now, that's a lot of that would be resources too.
Someone else I want to quickly talk about is Dale Garlett. Went to Hawthorn at pick 38. It seems like that was a little bit doctored. I know, Rick, you mentioned this about 3 months ago on the podcast that you reckon Hawthorn would somehow end up with him. And it's actually happened.
Psychic ability, Macca. No, they've just got. I reckon they've just got a game in place that they play with these kids. I mean, rumour was they did it with Cyril Rioli as well, and they just tell them what to say and then pick them up. To me, he just looked like he was Hawthorn bound all that time ago, and I guess he was willing to run the risk, of the gamble of Hawthorn picking him up, because I mean they could have changed their mind, but. It's just poor form when, Port organises to meet and interview him and he doesn't even show. To me, it just smells fishy, to be honest. But what can you do?
Not much.
No, look, I guess at the end of the day, you're not going to draft someone who doesn't really want to be there. I mean, Ben Jacobs has shown what happens if you draft that sort of player.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep. I saw Garlett play this year, and it was one of the laziest games of football I've seen. And he kicked 3 goals, and what he did, he looked good, but it was just lazy football. And you sit there and go, well, Hawthorn is still taking a risk with him. Just because he's one of the most talented kids going around doesn't mean he's a lay-down was there to make it.
Yep.
Do some of these guys on their second year tread water in terms of just going through the motions, don't want to get injured, so therefore I'm going to just go through the motions because I know I'm going to get drafted anyway by Hawthorn or whoever?
Yeah, well, maybe.
Yeah.
I think there's the odd kid that goes through the motions, and then there's the odd kid that really suffers from, he's a good 17-year-old, and we project so much more improvement in him. And when he only improves a little bit or he just does the right amount of work, downgraded his performance lower than what it actually was because you're actually expecting more.
Yep. Well, look, I mean, the talk of Garlett going to Hawthorn has been around for a couple of months at least. Do you think he was given an assurance at some point during the year? Does that actually happen? Do young players get given an assurance that they're going to get drafted? I know, there's cases like Sam Colquhoun who was told he was going to get picked in the pre-season draft before it actually happened. But in terms of the national draft, do we think that do recruiters go to kids and say, hey, look, if you're going to be there at pick 40, we're going to pick you?
No. No,
Definitely not.
definitely not. Like, sometimes you'd be tempted to, but in this day and age, you just don't know how the card's going to fall. Like, it's really only the day before the draft that the top 5 find out where they're going to go.
Yep.
And even then, now the clubs aren't allowed to tell them, but they tell them without telling them type thing. But, yeah, it's like there's no point telling Nathan Freeman you're going to take him at number 10, only to find somehow that James Ace is still available when you're going to pick Ace instead. Like, you just burn too many bridges that way.
But maybe with the lower end picks, you know, your second rounders, you maybe have a bit more flexibility to do some sort of deal like that because there's not as much on the line. You're playing with fire. And you know, as a club, if you get caught out trying to get somebody to lay down, your punishment's going to be huge. Like, I remember seeing the ruckman that's WA at the moment from Port play an under-15s game. My first reaction was, can we send him back to Streaky Bay? Not let him come back here for 3 years, because you just knew he was that good. But there's no way you would go to the kid and say, go back and play local footy. We'll pick you up in 3 years. I'm not convinced, Mish. I still reckon they're up to skullduggery.
Well, wasn't Alistair Clarkson in contact with Garlett the whole time, like through the season? That's the rumour anyway. Like, he was sending him text messages and stuff all the time.
Yeah, that's the rumour that they've been talking to him since about March.
Yeah, I don't like it. I think it's free agency for people who haven't even earned it. You know, deciding where you want to go and saying, oh yeah, I'm going to go to Hawthorn because they want me, because they're a premiership side and I don't want to go to anyone else. It's just, no. You should be grateful for being drafted to any club and not be able to just pick and choose like Rioli did.
Yeah, spot on.
Exactly.
Can't disagree with that. All right, well let's start concentrating on Port Adelaide's picks. I think if we were going to talk about it as a whole, you'd say it's a unique blend of speed and endurance. We've picked one tall forward and about 6 flankers across both drafts. Before we go into the individual picks, how did you see that draft structure panning out for us as a whole?
Well, let's look at it. Our team at the end of the year. What would you want to improve in our team?
Speed.
A lockdown defender, speed, and who's probably the next player to retire off of our list?
Kasisi.
And who's the other one?
Logan.
Oh, I'd say he'd keep playing. He's just going to get delisted before he gets to 30-odd.
Well, Kane Corns.
Kane Corns, yeah. So you got your 2 hard Tager-type midfielders. Now these guys, so we're after a back pocket, Tager-type midfielders and speed. Well, what have we drafted?
Speed and flankers.
Who can be Tager-types? Because they've all got endurance.
I mean, I don't mind what we drafted overall. I mean, it's debatable some of the players that we drafted, and maybe we could have drafted somebody else. But overall, I don't mind the strategy. I don't think there was much in tall timber wise, and as you pointed out today with the rookie draft, there's such a low percentage of the forwards make it in the rookie draft. You know, it's a high risk. You know, maybe we just try to fill those needs, and Mish is spot on, and everyone was crying out for a small defender. So, you know, you got to roll the dice and pick a few of them and have a look. Some of the boys that we picked up, you know, bloody fit. So it'll be interesting to see how they go.
Yeah. My strategy, I was thinking, was going to be, obviously speed was a key priority because that's something that really cost us at least a couple of games this year. A clearance-winning midfielder was high on my priority, and a tall forward. And we've got plenty of speed. We've got a tall forward. I don't think we've got a clearance-winning midfielder. But you never know. Someone like an Impey might turn out to be that sort of player.
You also got to factor in too that when Walsh is working with the midfield, maybe half the problem was the setup.
That's true.
With the clearances and stuff. So maybe they're thinking to themselves, well, we'll give the guys we've got a year to work it out and see if it's not something in terms of a tactical thing rather than skill level. Because, I mean, I was looking at our list you'd think most of the people on there, apart from the ones that are over 20, 26, 27, have improvement left in them still.
Yep.
So I was thinking about it at the time. I was thinking, oh, why do we recruit all these guys? But I would rather focus on getting a particular position and get 4 or 5 guys who will fill 2 spots and make sure that we get them right. And they've all got competition, so therefore it improves everyone around them because they all know they're going for that particular spot, rather than just getting one guy to fill the need and maybe he works out, maybe he doesn't, and he's just gifted games because he's the only guy who can play there.
That's right. Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's what I'm looking at. I'm thinking, yeah, I can understand what they're doing. Target that particular the things that we need. Get as many people who can fill that role as possible. And I mean, with any draft, you're hoping 2 or 3 will be good, because not all of them are going to work out.
No, that's right.
And then take it from there.
Yep. I think also looking at it in terms of list structure, we've got 2 young guys who haven't played a game yet in Ben Newton and Brendan Archie, who both, I mean, they're probably their key playmaking ability is their clearance winning ability. So maybe we didn't need another clearance, sort of like a slow, stocky clearance winning mid in this draft, because we've already got them there.
Well, some people seem to rate Newton fairly highly, so he must have something to work with.
Yep. Well, they're both probably on their last chance. They've been given 1-year contracts, so you'd think if they don't make something this year, then they're gone, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people were a bit dismayed that we didn't go tall with one of our 2 live rookie picks, but I did the stats today, as Rick mentioned earlier. Since 2001, there's been 64 rookie list key position forwards drafted, and only 4 of them have been any good. And that's, and I'm not even talking superstar level, I'm talking average or better. And that's Satantaro Halpin, who's been borderline for the last 10 years. That's James Posiadley, who failed twice before he got picked up as a mature ager. Stuart Camerashy, who was actually picked as a midfielder before Essendon threw him forward and surprised he could play forward. And also Josh Jenkins, who will probably play a lot of footy for the Crows out of a key forward position. So you're looking at a strike rate there of around about 6%, which is pretty diabolical. So you can understand why the club and why a lot of clubs choose not to pick key forwards with rookie picks.
And I wouldn't know who you would pick as a key forward out of this group. Conlon was the only one, but that would be purely down to medical.
Hey, Mish, were you surprised that Freo took Aitness at 17 so high? Because you weren't convinced on him last week.
I'm not convinced on him, but I'm not surprised because Freo have this lack of forwards and lack of tools moving forwards that they've really got to address. They started to address last year in the rookie draft, but yeah, they just need to draft tools, both ends of the field, and Sandlands is on his last leg, so they need a ruckman to back up Griffin and Clark. Now, otherwise they'll find themselves in the position with 2 ruckmen, and that's why they got Hanneth last year, because they needed that extra body in ruck. And I think Port would have drafted a player like Hanneth this year in the rookie draft if there was one around. Right. There's just no rucks running around the state leagues which you sit there and think could play half reasonable AFL football.
Yep.
And did our former mate Alan Richardson do the dirty on us with Luke Dunstan, as it was implied this week?
So.
No,
I don't think so.
I think if he took Impey, there'd be comments that yes, he did. But
Yeah, I don't think so. I think Dunstan's been widely picked by just about everybody to go to St Kilda for about at least 3 or 4 weeks. Richo's only been there for 1. And as the club said, we traded down from pick 14 to pick 21 because we knew that Impey was going to be there. So yeah, I don't think that's true at all, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's looking too much into it.
I'm just imagining the people who've lost their minds when we drafted Impey at 21 what they would have done had we drafted him at 14. And McCarthy was still there and everything. Like, what the?
Oh, that would have been fun. That would have been fun.
I think Impey, we'll talk about Impey now because we might as well go through all the individual players. We've picked Jarman Impey. He's from the Murray Bush Rangers. He's 178 centimetres, 76 kilos. He's a small utility. He can play forward. He played a lot down back this year as well and can play through the midfield. As a player comparison, you can expect to see a bit of Chris Yarran in him. In terms of his physical attributes, he was top 6% in the standing and right running jump. He was in the top 14% in both the 20 metre sprint and the repeat sprints. He got a 13.11 beep test and an 11-minute 3 kilometre. And I would say if we definitely picked Impey ahead of Cameron McCarthy, Big Footy would have been in meltdown mode.
Yes.
But we've got Impey. I personally think this is a fantastic pick. At the time, I had my heart set on De Menthe. He was there. I was thinking, it seems likely that we're going to get De Menthe. Then we chose Impey. My first thought was, what the hell is this? And then I thought, well, actually, if I think back, he was probably third on my want list anyway. And he fulfills a bigger need than what De Menthe would have, in my opinion.
I think for the first time for a while, Port with their first pick just hasn't gone best available. Yep. They've gone the best that fits their needs of the football club. And the best available wasn't that much better that they had to go with the best available. Like, if Aish was still available, they would have gone, bugger what we need, we'll get him.
Yep.
But, yeah, I don't think there's that big a difference. They've just approached it with, we want somebody who can fill this role. Now, again, a lot of Big Footy was really suffering because there wasn't any decent footage leaving in. There's nothing to sit there and go, well, yeah, we hear he's hard and tough. And so on draft night, everybody's disappointed because we just hadn't seen what they were basing their pick on. And I think as soon as Big Footy saw the footage that the footy club put up, everybody changed their mind pretty damn quick that, yeah, this kid has something.
I know it's a bit cliche, but I think he's got a lot of X factor in his ability to run and create from defence. I think he's quite a smooth mover. Probably the one aspect which I'm not too sure on is his kicking efficiency, which is quite poor at this point.
In the footage that I saw, there was one particular play that he did where he actually he didn't just turn around the corner and kick it. He actually held the ball for a bit and made sure the pass was going to hit the guy up in the forward line. Like, he got the ball on the boundary and turned it around and just delayed it just that little bit and then just hit it. Now, he could have just turned around and blazed away, but I like the fact that he's got that little bit of poise to actually do that and make sure that the kick is going to do it. So, I don't know, maybe the kicking efficiency is something that, from what you're telling me, he needs to work on, but I think he's got the attributes to get there, if that makes sense.
Yep. I think he was working, Mish, you might know more, I think he was working at about 58% kicking efficiency this year.
Yeah, something low like that. So that depends on where you play too, because forwards generally have a lot lower kicking efficiency, in particular small forwards, because they're getting balls, they're crumbing and they're having pot shots at goal with snaps and all that. And kicking efficiency is, if you kick a point and that's inefficient, well, sometimes I wonder about that. If you're having a snap for goal, and at best you're 50-50 chance anyway.
Yep.
So, again, it would be interesting to see his footage. I think his kicking needs to be cleaned up, but I don't think it's that sort of level where you get there and go, here's a crap kick and he'll never be a reasonable kick. I just think he's just got to get sharper with his ball drop.
Yep. Definitely fixable. Do we think, from what I can tell, he's got quite a big body. He looks like he can fit in pretty early on in the piece this year. What's our expectations for him this year? Do we expect him to play many games?
10.
Yep, I'd think about that. I think there's a spot for him in the side if he's good enough and fit enough to get in pretty early.
Who's he going to force out of the finals team?
Possibly someone like Logan or Colquhoun, depending on how they go in the pre-season as well. Aaron Young maybe as well.
Ken will find a spot for him if he wants him. And the thing that Ken will do is if he thinks he's going to be in the future, Ken will want to try and get 6 games into him this year.
Yep.
The same like he did with Colquhoun last year. I want to get 6 games into Colquhoun, which is what he said when he dropped Thomas. He didn't want to drop Thomas, but he wanted to get the 6 games into Colquhoun. And you could see the improvement in Colquhoun once he knew he was going to get those few extra games, and he earned his final spot. So I think at some stage next year, if Impey's perform, first thing I want to see is him perform at SANFL level. Make sure that he's an SANFL footballer first, and then, be given those couple of games when somebody goes down injured. Let's say Pittard's going to miss his standard month of football. We'll swap him in and see how he goes.
All right, on to pick 45. We wanted a key forward. We got our man Mitch Harvey from North Adelaide. He's 196 centimetres, 96 kilos. As a player comparison, I would think a mix between sort of Damon White and Josh Kennedy. Now, his physical attributes, because of his draft combine and the glandular fever, they were pretty dire. He got a 3.22 in the 20-metre sprint. He got a 10.3 beep test, which was the worst. And he got a 14-minute 56 in the 3-kilometre, which was by far the worst. We know he was suffering from glandular fever. Mish, I know you weren't too keen on him last week. Why do you think we went after Mitch Harvey?
Okay, there's a few things. On top of those stats, you got his pre-season stats. He ran a 3.11, which showed he actually had okay speed.
Yep.
He ran a 10.7 beat, which showed he had no endurance whatsoever.
Yep.
And a 13-odd minute 3K. And again, all endurance said, God, this guy is wrong. But one thing to take from what he's done that I've looked at since the draft when I was trying to work out why the hell they went this way. Mitch Harvey was 140 kilos at the beginning of the year, and he's dropped that down to 96. So the kid's gone 96. So he's lost 8 kilos this season during the year. So he's obviously got off his butt and tried to work on his fitness. No, you just don't lose 8 kilos because you're running around not taking anything seriously.
Yep.
Obviously, the main thing for him was to come out and have a good draft camp, and he was crook. You can't debate that he was crook. So you have to ignore what was in draft camp's fitness testing. So the only other thing you can go by is his skin folds. He showed up with close to skin folds of 80 in the pre-season.
Yep.
By the time draft camp comes around, his skin folds are down to 45.
Wow.
Which means that guy's done a fair bit of effort. I don't know how much that's going to relate to his endurance base, but it certainly shows that he's going to put the work in.
Could that be something, Mish, that could, he's obviously worked hard to drop the weight and get his skin folds, and maybe we might see a flow-on effect next season where he might be able to get his endurance up and become more competitive and getting a spot in the team?
I would think, yeah, because he's obviously done a lot of work, and again, it's starting to show that he's got the work ethic. So if he's going to come in, he's going to do the work. If they're going to do the work, at least you've got a shot of them improving their fitness base. Yep. Now, they would have also looked at his running during games, and they may have, and they've seen trainings where they'd have more information about how his endurance has improved at training and stuff like that. So they've got a lot more information than what we have as just people going to watch a game of football.
The thing I like about him going on more of a football track is I think he's quite a clean player. He can take a good grab. I think he's got a fantastic kicking action, very good kick for goal. He's got a lot of football nous. Do we like his football ability as opposed to his physical ability?
Certainly as a lead up forward, in the air, and he can clonk it. He knows the angles. He can split from his full forward, so he's going to be hard to defend in the air. I think ground level he's got a lot of work, but I think a lot of that would be in the past that is all he's had to do is lead up and mark.
Yep.
So I don't think ground level is ever going to be his strength, but if he's prepared to work, at least he'll have an impact at ground level.
Yeah, I just think he gets to work on probably the 1%ers and stuff. Like, I mean, at SNFL level, all he needs to do is just clunk marks and kick goals. That's it. But at an AFL forward, you can't get away with just doing that these days. You've got to be able to do things like tackling and forward pressure and all that sort of stuff. So I think with the improving his endurance, which you would like to think he would have done quite a bit better at draft camp, and if he's lost 8 kilos and reduced his skin folds by that much, you would think that there'd be more of an improvement there than what we saw. So that was the glandular fever thing taking into effect. So I just think hopefully he can improve that side of his game, because if he doesn't, and all he's going to do is just be that goal square guy who just stands in the goal square and all he does is try and get marks and kick goals, then he might be going the way of Daniel Stewart. Not that he's going to be that bad, because at least he can contest a mark, but, you know, that sort of could have been anything but became nothing.
Yeah. I think it's clear he probably need to add an extra dimension to his game in terms of sort of repeat leading and leading up the field a bit more. Maybe he can turn into a centre-half forward if he can get his fitness right. Because, yeah, if he just becomes a sort of a lead mark, you know, forward 25-metre arc player, there's not many of them around anymore, if there's any at all, to be honest. Even Schulze this year has learned how to go beyond the 50-metre arc, and he was one of our leading 50-metre inside 50 players this year. So.
Josh Kennedy's probably one of the most one-dimensional footballers running around, but he just presents and presents and presents all day, and he's a good mark, and he'll get the job done. Eventually he'll take the mark and he'll use the ball. One thing with Mitch is he's actually got quite good agility for his size, so there's a potential for him to actually be quite good at ground level, or, as I said, at least serviceable.
Expectations for this year. Me personally, I'm thinking he's not going to get a game, or will at all go close to getting a game. I think we'll rely on Butcher and Shaw for that sort of thing this year. I think this year should solely be a development year for him. Get into the SANFL League side, stay there, and see if he can kick some goals and improve his body and his leading ability.
I'd be stoked if he kicked 40 SANFL goals. I'd be absolutely over the moon.
Absolutely. I'd be stoked as well.
And again, that's not doing a lot. That's just 2 goals a game. So that's not setting the world on fire. That's just stepping up to the grade.
Yep.
Yes, okay. Yeah, I agree with you. He's not good. I would think if he gets a game, then we've got bigger problems than what we first thought, because that means that neither Butcher nor Shaw is either fit or has come on enough to warrant them getting selected, and that is a problem.
That would be a problem.
Having said all that, this time last year, if you told me Jake Need would have played AFL football, I would have laughed at your face.
Very true, very true. I was thinking he was going to be stuck in the SANFL reserves all year. And he played some absolutely fantastic games at AFL level.
His game against West Coast was just, yep.
All right, moving on. Pick 52, Darcy Byrne-Jones. Mish got his man. 30 picks later, but he's still got him. Oakley Chargers, 181.4 centimetres, 69 kilos. He's a small, rebounding, very quick defender. Player comparison, well, he's almost a carbon copy of Jasper P Dad, even down to the hyphen in his name as well.
Except he's a lot more competitive.
Yes. Physical attributes, 2 second 94 20 metre sprint, which was 10th in the draft combine. He finished 4th in the agility test, a 15.2 beep test, which is very elite. He finished 5th there. 24.06 second repeat sprint, which was 2nd, and a 10-minute flat 3 kilometre, which was 5th. So he's pretty much absolutely nailed the draft combine.
So why didn't he get picked up earlier?
Mish?
Yeah.
I would think we're making the comparison to Pittard. Pittard's foot skills are better.
That's a worry.
No, Pittard's a good kick when he's got time, and he can actually be an elite kick. I think Pittard's still finding his feet at AFL level, and his kicking will come through when he gets better. Again, Darcy's for a lot of people, he's that little bit too skinny. He's around where he'd go, where he's gone. We were saying last week at pick 21, it's a bit of a reach, but it's the type of player we were looking for. Yeah. Why he's got the through to there, I'm not sure, but I'm happy he has.
Maybe we were playing some games.
Yeah, maybe. I like that footage of him when he took in those. I think he was behind one of the players going on for the ball in that boundary, and he took it and then just spun around and dodged past that guy and kicked the ball out. I thought, yeah, that's the sort of guy we need. Someone with that speed that can close down someone, but not only just to tackle them, but actually go get the ball and get it out of there. Because this season, there was a lot of times when, I'm all for tackling, but I would rather have the ball first anyway and get rid of it first, because that means that because if you're tackling, it means the other guys have got the ball, and we don't want that.
Yep. I think one thing with Darcy, it'll be interesting to see Burst's reaction, but I think you'll find he's very strong for his size. He's one of these skinny kids that is actually strong, and he shows that in his footage where he's pushing people at the right time and getting them off the ball, where normally you're used to seeing kids his size get pushed off the ball.
Yep. That was one thing that I very much noticed about Jasper Pittard's draft video, was that he was getting pushed around something chronic, falling over, all that sort of thing. You don't get that with Byrne-Jones. He looks, as you said, he looks very clever physically. He knows his limitations, but his positioning has been very good.
When we drafted O'Shea, it was like, you beauty, we got somebody who's a real competitor. And I have the same feeling with Darcy. You beauty, we got somebody who's a real competitor.
I liked his footage, and yeah, I agree. He's a type of player where, we could put him away for a year or two now and let him beef up, and we don't need to rush him into the team, maybe like we did in the past couple of years, trying to pump development in, because, as I said last week and the week before, I'm pretty comfortable where our team's at now. I think, our first 22 is almost there, and they're just got to keep developing with time. So, that gives these young fellas, and if we go back to the forward as well, gives them time to actually develop in the SANFL now, get their strength up, get their conditioning right, and be ready to push for selection. So, to me, it was a no-lose pick, really. His stats look great. He just needs to put on a bit of extra weight and then show us what he can really do, and we've got time to see that.
All right, pick 68. Now, I remember, Mish, last week you said we've got someone in mind because we've delisted Brent Renouf. We've got someone in mind. They're probably going to be from left field, a little bit left of centre. Not many people might have heard of him. And then we picked Karl Amon, who probably everybody on our board went, who on earth is Karl Amon? Well, he's from the Sandringham Dragons. He's 181 centimetres, 71 kilos. He's an outside midfielder. Player comparison, I think he looks quite similar to a Sharad Wellingham. Once he was picked, I checked the draft camp results again and realised, hey, now I remember where I recognise his name from. He got a 2.88 in the 20 metres, which was 5th. He finished 5th in the agility test as well. He got a 14.4 in the beat test. And he was also in the top 15% in the 3 kilometre as well. So he was another one that really showed something at draft camp in terms of his physical attributes.
Didn't rack up a lot of disposals, sort of average disposal numbers I saw in the post from REH during the week. So, and again, a bit of a lightweight, so he's got a bit of work to do there.
It's definitely a project, isn't he?
Yep.
Like if Harvey's not going to get a game and Byrne-Jones is not going to get a game, well then Amon's definitely not going to. Not for probably 2 years, maybe even, well, yeah, maybe a bit longer than that. It all depends on, obviously, injuries and things like that. But we definitely need outside run. And that, as Mish said at the start of the podcast, someone who's going to replace that that tagging role. And if Amon has this agility and endurance, which he seems to have, and he can build it up and he can learn from Kane now when he's over in Dubai and over the coming years, then hopefully we've got that role sorted out for the future, because you definitely need, I mean, I know someone famous once said, good teams don't tag or something like that. But I think when you're gumming up against elite midfields, you're going to want to have that that option there to take one of their midfielders or someone out of the game.
Yeah, I think with Amon, they've just seen this kid who is so exceptional with his ball in his hand. He's just elite skills, he's quick, and he can get through and do some magical stuff. I think they'd be quite aware that he doesn't do it often enough. And in a normal draft, he probably wouldn't have got picked. But you're in this draft, you're down that low. I don't think Port need to go for that solid citizen Battersby type who's going to stay on your list for the next 7 years but maybe never actually step up and be a good AFL footballer. Whereas I think Amon's going to be on your list. Within 2 years you're going to know if he's an AFL footballer or not. So he's not going to clog your list up. If he becomes an AFL footballer, he's got some serious talent. So I think next year will be all about, mate, you got to find out how to get the ball 20 times a game as the outside mid. He's the one who's, I think they've got for outside speed. The Tager, I think, they'll be looking at Impey they'll be looking at Impey and Darcy Jones to be down, one of them to do the down back role, and then one of them to become the tagging midfielder, I would think.
Mind you, we've also Camerashy did a lot of work this year as a tagger. A lot of it went unnoticed, especially in the pre-season. He was following around players like Nick Del Santo. I think he's someone that we might look to the future in that tagging role.
I agree with you.
He's fit, he's quick, he's tall, he can take a grab. We saw in the finals how brilliant he is dropping back. We know from the games that we won very late this year that, you know, he is ridiculously fit and can run till the end. Personally, I think he's the perfect tagger.
Until you get him on a real nippy midfielder, I think. So against those that workhorses like Del Santo, I think he's a great fit.
Yep.
But if you're going to try and get him to tag a Rioli out of the midfield, I think you're really making him work hard.
Yeah, but who can tag a Rioli in the midfield? Not many.
No, and that's why I think Ken's gone. Well, I think short term he wants White to be able to do that, have the speed and endurance and the toughness to go with him, with players like that. And then I think part of this is I want to draft a kid in who can be very good at that in the future.
Yep. All right, on to the rookie draft. Pick 13, we chose Sam Russell from the Geelong Falcons. Another one that had me scratching my head on who on earth he is. He's a 179 centimetres, 75 kilo, small shutdown defender. And going by the minimal footage that we saw of him, he looks very much like Sam Colquhoun in running style, kicking style, haircut, everything.
Except he's quicker.
Yes, very much so.
Yep. And his baby.
This is one I'm very intrigued about because obviously they've scouted him for a reason. We've picked him up for a reason. We've noted that he's only made the draft by 2 days. It's a very interesting pick.
Again, they've gone for X Factor. They haven't gone safe. they've identified, again, quick endurance. He did a 13-13 beep at state screening with a sore hamstring. So you sort of sit there and go, I wonder what you can do when you actually fit. And again, as you said, a couple of days younger, he's in next year's group. He'd play midfield in the TAC and it'd probably go pick 40 in next year's draft if his season had progressed like you would think. He's played a lot of college football on a wing, so that would be interesting to see how much of the footy he got at that level, because he racked it up there. Obviously, Geelong Falcons, he's played in the back pocket, and probably his own worst enemy of, good, you can go stand their best full tall forward because you actually stand him, where they try the other kids and they'll go play their own football. So the coaches stick them down there rather than running them through the midfield.
I just hope we give these boys time. You know, I think where a lot of people on the board and just in footy supporters in general were just really keen, 2 years, bang, I haven't seen them, let's burn them off and let's try another one. And, you know, you're talking about another one like Sammy C, they're, you know, underage players, and Brendan Archie, and, you know, we've got to give some of these boys, you know, a good 3 or 4 years to physically develop, to have an opportunity to play AFL. And, you know, not everyone's a freak of nature like Wingard and Wines that can play straight away from the get-go. And, you know, we've just got to sometimes, you know, pull ourselves in when we're trying with our expectations and just look at them objectively and give them time. And hopefully we as supporters will do that, and we'll see the benefits of those in 4 years. As Janus said before, you know, some of these players, you've got to wait 3 years before you really see them, hopefully.
Yep. I know there's been a lot of conjecture about this pick on the boards and sort of why have we gone this. You know, we overlooked James Battersby, he was there. Me personally, I really like James Battersby as well. I would have loved to have picked him up, but look, for every, you know, highly rated pick who ends up sliding and missing the draft, and everyone goes, oh my god, I can't believe he missed out, and then you overlook him in the rookie draft and goes, oh my god, this is such a massive mistake. But look, for every Aaron Davey and Daniel Pearce, who are highly rated kids that went early in the rookie draft and made a big career for themselves, you know, there's a Rory Kirkby or a Ryan Jackson or a Todd Grimer or David Gordis, Casey Sibasato, Waylon Manson, Roland Archie, Tom Hurley, all these guys that were highly rated, expected to go top in the top sort of 2 rounds in the draft, and no one's ever heard of them again. You know, so there's no guarantees that someone like Battersby is going to make it at AFL level. That's just my little rant.
Yeah. This is true. I mean, when you're looking at a rookie draft. So, how many picks were live in the national draft? 70 something. So
not even that, I don't think, this year.
Not even that.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, whatever it was a high number at least. And all these clubs had passed over Battersby for one reason or another and said, no, this guy's better than him. And when you get to a rookie draft, unless you think you are going to win a premiership in the next year or two, I'm of the opinion that the rookie draft you use to either pick speculative picks, guys that might make it, might not, but if they do make it, it's going to be fantastic. That's why you hear all these stories. Oh, this guy came from the rookie draft, you know, because obviously some clubs didn't rate something about him, and he worked on it because maybe that was the kick up the bum that he needed to pull his finger out and say, hang on, you've actually got to work on this particular thing to make a success as an AFL player. As Rick was saying before, we've got to give these guys time, but the thing that you want to see every year is improvement, like in terms of how they're playing and stuff. If they're stagnating, then that's the time after 2 years. If they haven't shown anything at all, then you can say, well, get rid of them, because obviously they haven't applied themselves. But as long as they're showing improvement, then I'm all for picking guys with that bit of an X factor, you know, because I think we've got enough players that can do that, the solid role, and at an elite level, but we don't have any guys who could really, not many guys who can really turn a game. Like, you got Wingard and maybe Gray.
Yep.
But not all the rest of the guys are just, I mean, they're solid and good. Like, I love Travis Bogue. He's a great player, but I suppose he did on that showdown. See, I'm thinking of the 10 clearances he had, or whatever it was, in that last quarter. That was turning the game.
Yep.
But you know what I mean, though.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Rookie drafts are people who have that X factor, in my opinion.
Fair enough too.
Again, when you're drafting, you should be looking for somebody who can play football on grand final day. Not somebody who will hold up and end through rounds 5 to 7 in the middle of winter or whatever. So, in this draft, like, you sit there and you talk to people in the know, and they get there and go, they were going to the draft table with 25 players who they thought were actually draftable in this draft. The rest of them were all rookie type picks, whereby they're starting to stretch and pick at straws. Like, where normally they'd be sitting there with going into a draft thinking there's 35 guys in this draft that are draftable. And that's how thin this draft was. So there wasn't going to be too many picks where we'd be sitting there going, you beauty, we've nailed it.
All right, moving on. Pick 29. We picked a familiar face for Port Adelaide supporters, Sammy Gray from the Port Adelaide Magpies. He's 176 centimetres, 75 kilo, small midfielder or forward. Player comparison, he's very similar to a Jeremy Clayton. He's a prolific ball winner at SANFL level. He won the best and fairest. He was second in the Maguire. He averages 25 touches, 7 marks, and almost a goal a game at SANFL level this year. How do we see him fitting in? And whereabouts do we think his AFL capability might be?
Don't think
Magpies.
Magpies.
Sorry.
I can't see him. I honestly can't see him making it as a midfielder at AFL level. I think he might have a chance as a forward pocket or a flanker, because he is very clever around goals. He's got fantastic foot skills across short to medium distances. I think he can sort of telegraph and get up and under some long kicks that he does. But you can't deny his ability to actually find the footy.
Yeah, he's a strange one, because you look at him and you get there and go, where are you going to play? You're not quick. He doesn't. These small forwards these days, we generally work on elite pace. Gray hasn't got elite pace.
No.
So you sort of sit there and go, well, if we just look at that angle of it, he's not going to make it a small forward. Midfield, you can get away without great pace, as long as you know how to find the footy, which Gray knows how to find the footy. But to get in the midfield, he's got to be better than Boak, Hartlett, Ebert, Wines, Cassisi, Corns, and on and on and on. Like, so you sort of sit there and go, well, that elite group of midfielders, you can't see him breaking into it. Having said that, I'm ecstatic that they rookie picked another Port boy with their last rookie pick. It's 3 years in a row they've done that with their last rookie pick.
Yep.
The thing I'm looking at it is not so much Gray as a player. Like, I think I agree with Macca in terms of he will need to work up forward if he's going to be anywhere. But I'm thinking long term in terms of if players from other places can see that there's a pathway to getting being on an AFL list with a rookie, even if it's a rookie pick, right? You can say that if you're the best player at the Magpies, you will get picked up by Port Adelaide. Then it stands to reason that it'll improve the players that we get for the academy, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So we borrow a line from Ken and say they will get what they deserve.
Yeah, exactly. Get what they deserve, you know. But so where this year you think to yourself, well, why did we pick Sam Gray? He's not going to beat anyone else out in the midfield, and he might not make it up as a forward. But I'm thinking into the future, there might be players who will be like that, and the reason why they're like that is because they've looked at the setup that we've got and said, hey, I could see that Sam Gray's been promoted from the seniors to an AFL list, and he had his shot. So therefore, that could be me in a couple of years' time or whenever. So I'm looking at it from that sort of perspective rather than just the player itself. I mean, I could understand people say, oh, it's a charity pick and it's a waste of a pick or whatever, but it's only a waste if all you're looking at is either Sam Gray's not going to make it, which I think he still could if he works at it, but also the other side of it too is there might be someone in the youth ranks who's actually quite a decent player, you know, and they've looked at that and said, yeah, I'll go play for Port Adelaide because they seem to support the players that they've got. Whereas you take a look at the guys across the road or down the road or wherever they are, they're picking guys from anywhere, and it shows because there's not that structured pathway in terms of actually you can actually see. It's like, oh yeah, if I do this, then I'll get to here, and if I do this, I'll get to here. It's just like pick players from wherever.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I do like that. I think it's a good strategy to have, and will hopefully pay dividends in the future.
Yep. And the other thing with Gray is his mature body. He's worked his butt off for 4 years. For the first time in his life, he's going to get in a full-time footy environment. So he's got the work ethic. Some of these guys from state leagues get into the full-time environment and they grow another leg. Like, they can take their game to another level. So you're just hoping that happens with him as well.
There's plenty of success stories from state leagues who've missed out on a number of drafts, come in and played some really good footy. You've only got to look at someone like Josh Marnie for Port Adelaide, who ended up winning a premiership and was a leading goal kicker, and he was a fantastic state league player for a number of years before he got given another shot at AFL level.
Yep. Well, Cullinan's another one who busted his gut at state league level, and everybody kept saying he was too slow for AFL football. Well,
yep.
He got to AFL football and he proved he wasn't too slow for it.
Now, the next pick we chose, we'll talk about it, I guess, briefly, was pick 44, Brent Renouf. We promised him another spot on the rookie list. We did it. Are we happy with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Had to do it.
Yep. Yep. The kid can still play. Some of his games last year were quite good. Right.
Yeah, he had a great showdown. The first showdown, he was fantastic.
Yep. So if they can get his body right, we got 3 class ruckmen.
I think Renouf's a very good ruckman. I think my only issue with Renouf is that if we play Renouf, we can't really play another ruck because all he can do is ruck, whereas Lobie and Redden can play forward and are much more physically capable of playing a different role. Whereas with Renouf, he's much more of that sort of old dinosaur. You know, all he can do is tap the ball and that's about it.
Yeah, and you're judging a Renouf that's on one knee for the last 4 years. So that's what I mean. If they can get him right, he can be a real good ruck. He won't be as good forward as Redden, because Redden's going to be a good forward. But yeah, I think to have a Renouf as your third ruck's going to be a great asset.
Yep. And very briefly, we've spoken about him before on this podcast. We picked him up a few weeks ago, but I guess we made it official now. Daniel Flynn. How do we see him fitting in?
Exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing him, another fast-based endurance guy, but I'm a big fan of the Irish players, the ones that make it. They seem to have, talking about X Factor, Mish, they seem to have a bit of X Factor, and I'm really keen to see what he can produce for us.
Ridiculously fit, ridiculously quick, and ridiculously good skills, I think, going by his draft combine results. So I think he's the real X factor of our draft year. If he comes good and can play consistent AFL football, that is a massive win for us.
Yes. I've actually seen his game against the AIS. So it's interesting watching a kid run around with his talent when he had no idea what he was doing. Like, basically, it's his first game of football, and he's playing the AIS kids. Like, these kids know what they're doing. They plonked him in the middle. if he knew how to tackle, he would have laid 12 tackles for that game. He just, again, his tackling is soft because they don't do tackling in their game. So obviously they've got to really work on that side, but his instinct to tackle was all there. His just technique was shocking. So you get this midfielder he could get to where the ball was. He wasn't having problems getting to where the ball was at stoppages. So that's a big plus. When he got the ball, his instinct was you run on football. As you can imagine from their football, it's just instinct. Give and run past and for the second ball and all that. So he's got the spread and all that instinct in his football. His kicking, even back then, was precise, well weighted. So yeah, he's just got to adapt to the physical side of the game of football, I reckon.
Yep.
Get him in the sandpit in pre-season. He'll be right.
Well, I think they'll enjoy it. Well, considering how much our tackling improved this year, like that was amazing. Like we went from a crap team that just get brushed aside to people laying some of the most brilliant tackles in it. But almost Ollie Wine set the scene in the first game when he grabbed Roden and drove him into the ground. It was like, yep, we're on. Yep. Flynn's got to have 12 months in the sample just to find his feet without pressure. And all of a sudden, if he does come good before the season, well and be it, that's bonus. But you really just want to get him up to football speed. And you want to be giving him good minutes. So you don't want to be playing him as a sub in the AFL where he's only going to get a quarter of football or something like that. He needs to get as many games of footy into him at the moment as he can.
So we're thinking it's just educating him on how to play like the tactical side of footy.
Yeah,
the word.
Yep.
That's
I think he's a long-term project.
Yep.
You know, looking at sort of 2016 onwards, I think with Flynn.
Yeah.
I would be hoping for 2015, but next year you just write off and go, it's your development year, mate. Then we're going to start putting the heat on you to perform.
So I was just getting excited when you were talking about him, about the speed, the skills and stuff, and thinking, oh yeah, this sounds really good.
You can see it coming, but it's still... AFL's a bloody tough sport. So to get there from having played 2 games of AFL in Europe and expect them to get to AFL standard within 20 weeks, he's going to be a sensation if he can do that. Right. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Just like Jake Need was never going to play round 1.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, but anyway.
Is it a bit disappointing?
I think... you go, Rick.
I was going to say, is it a bit disappointing that we didn't target one of those American basketballing rookies that came out and did some trials?
No. I'd hate to see how bad their foot skills are. Like, unless you showed me evidence that they could really kick, I'd just be happy with what we've got.
You don't think they'd be able to pick it up quick enough?
Kicking is a bloody hard thing to do. Right.
Yes, it is.
There's a lot of AFL footballers that still can't bloody kick.
Yep.
So, yeah, just to come...
One of them's named Jasper.
Steady on. He's not that bad. Leave him alone, man. Don't get me going, Macca.
Leave Jasper alone.
That's right.
Yeah.
Poor Jasper. Sorry, Jasper.
Oh, come on, everybody was going to delist Cameron O'Shea 12 months ago.
True, very true. Absolutely. So, as a draft as a whole, how do we think we went? Clearly, we went in with speed as a focus, with sort of someone that can play down back as a focus. Are we happy with who we've got? Considering
we couldn't go to the draft table and pick up a top 20 pick, so you couldn't pick up a player that you get there and go, yep, we've certainly got somebody who can play. So no matter who we picked, it was going to take effort.
We got our top 20 pick with Polo, really, in effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. So with
I look at it.
So I sit there and go, I think we approached it well. Most of the kids have got speed, most of them are competitive, most of them can kick. Like, yeah. So they've got a chance to make it if they're going to put the work in. So I like it.
It's an interesting one with me. I can see I can see it going down the same path as 2004, where in 3 years' time none of them are on the list. But I can also see a big future in all of them. I think they've got their own sort of niche. I think all of them, I think Impey and Byrne-Jones are going to be very competent AFL footballers. I think Harvey, if he can get his fitness up, is going to be a very competent AFL footballer. Amon's got a bit of X factor, a bit of an unknown, and then we've got Russell and Gray as well. So I think we've done pretty well.
Yeah. Yep.
For what we had, I think it's probably the best we could have hoped for in terms of if we've gone to the draft and looked at it for needs rather than best available and said, I mean, I like the fact that we got there and we focused and we said, yep, right, this is what we need. And you could see it. You could almost rattle off before these guys were picked. If you had a list of the guys on the board and you said, okay, this is the attributes of this particular player and this player and this player, you'd say, all right, this section here, this is what we're going for. All these guys underneath this list, you know, because they're all got that speed. They've all got the endurance. They've all got that bit of X factor about them. So I think, yeah, for what we had, it was pretty good. I know other people will disagree and say, oh, we should have got this guy or that guy or whatever. But like you said, Macca, in a couple of years' time is when we're going to know whether it worked or not. I'm confident it's going to work, but
I think if you take just names out of it and you look at the player styles that we picked, I think we've nailed it in terms of we've clearly gone in with this is what we need and this is what we've definitely got out of it. So very much looking forward to seeing how this draft year goes.
Yeah, the best thing about this time of the year, all new kids, all new fresh faces, and they've all given us a bit of new hope, haven't they?
Well, that's it.
And
that's why I look forward to drafting.
And guess what?
Really?
No mini draft. Yay!
Hey, and we did.
Thank God. Thank God no one has to go to bloody North Adelaide again.
And no one actually made reference to the fact with the AFL draft this year that it didn't go back from 10 to 1. Thank God for that.
Yes. Yep.
True. All right. Well, I think we're done. I think we're finished.
Now, Macca,
Yeah.
don't lose it this week.
I do apologise for everybody out there. The recording is done. My computer is not shut down just yet. I'm gonna finish this really quickly so it doesn't happen again. Oh, please tell me, Rick, you're doing a backup.
Well, you never sent me the details.
Oh my goodness, this is a disaster waiting.
Send me the details and I'll back it up, mate.
Good stuff. Well, Janus, thanks for coming on again, mate. Great to have you on.
thank you for having me. It was fun.
We'll get you on again soon. Mish, you as well, mate. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Macca.
Rick, as always, where are the fishing tips?
Fishing tips are plenty of yellowfin whiting are being caught at the moment, so get onto those. And also the gar and the tommies are starting to come on the bite. And just remember with the garfish, a lot of people fall into the trap of just leaving a burley pot in, and then what happens, the gar actually fill up quite quickly. So a lot of the tips with a few of the fishers out there is once you've got the gar around, just take your burley pot out and actually have a rag soaked in tuna oil and chuck that into just over the side of the boat, tied to a rope or something, and just create a stream with the oil, and that should keep the gar around and not overfill them, so you have more chance of getting them on the hook, because sometimes people complain about garfish being very hard to catch. That can be one of the big reasons.
Great stuff.
Pleasure.
All right, guys, until next week. Go the power.
All right, mate.
Go the power!
Ah, power.
Yeah.